It's a dangerous toxin for children that is essentially undetectable. Lead. It was banned from paint in the 70s, from plumbing in the 80s, to finally automobile fuel in the 90s. However, the one area where lead still flies high, aviation fuel. Specifically, the fuel used in most small planes.
We're talking about tons and tons of lead that are being contributed to the environment as a result of using it in leaded gasolines or aviation gasoline.
The lack of regulation when it comes to leaded aviation gasoline, or avgas, has caught the eye of Tulane professor Dr. Howard Mielke, who was also involved in getting rid of lead in automobile gasoline decades ago. In recent years, it's lead from these planes that make up more than half of the lead emissions in the U.S.
It's an easily overlooked problem, and that's because it's totally invisible. When you use lead in gasoline, and the exhaust turns out to be totally invisible.
But this invisible danger could have lasting effects on small children. Exposure to lead can cause brain damage, developmental delays, diabetes, and learning disabilities, which is why in 2012, the Centers for Disease Control said there is no safe level of lead exposure. There are 20,000 airports across the country that use leaded avgas, with millions of people who live around them, including 3 million kids. Researchers at Duke University found that those children living within 500 meters of the airports have higher levels of lead in the blood than children who live farther away.
But yet children in their hand-to-mouth activities are picking this material up very easily. And children are extremely sensitive to exposure to lead.
In 2008, the EPA began examining lead emissions from 3,000 U.S. airports where leaded avgas is used. 4 airports in southeast Louisiana were in the top 300, with Lakefront Airport leading the Louisiana airports in lead emissions, followed by Baton Rouge Metropolitan. The WDSU-I team went to green spaces around area airports to sample soil levels for lead. We gathered more than 50 samples from Hammond Airport, Houma Terrebonne Airport, Slidell, Lakefront, and even Armstrong International. We sent the soil samples to the LSU Soil and Testing Lab and a Caligari lab in Baton Rouge to check what chemical compounds were in the dirt.
Hello?
And if there were any alarming levels of lead.
You're not going to eat the soil, but you got to worry about children. That's the thing. That's why we get a lot of samples, because people like their animals or their children, they're worried about maybe eating some of the soil.
Out of the 5 airports, Hammond Airport had the highest lead level at 107.07 milligrams per kilogram.
This came out to be more than 107, so would you consider that high?
That's very high. I wouldn't want any child playing in anything, even, you know, at the maximum, maybe 40 is protective of a child.
The soil samples came from green spaces surrounding several subdivisions and homes.
But again, you wouldn't want a child playing in something like that?
No, not at all.
When we gathered our soil samples, we dug about 6 inches into the ground. However, Mielke says the most dangerous portion of the soil is going to be the surface, because that's where the concentration of this lead is falling. 3 environmental watchdog groups are petitioning the EPA to take action and work to limit leaded aviation gasoline. Friends of the Earth is one of those groups fighting for more than a decade to have leaded emissions from aircrafts regulated.
They need to know that lead is a problem and that EPA needs to do something about it right now to protect public health. We've asked EPA to make what's known as an endangerment finding, that these lead emissions are a danger to public health and they need to be phased out. And EPA has so far not taken that step.
Marcy Keever with FOE says it's possible for 75% of small engine planes to go lead-free right now. It just needs to be made available.
So folks should engage with their local airport when they can and see if unleaded can be made available, and it would make a huge difference in the emissions that are coming right now on our communities and our families.
Currently, there are 4 different companies working on creating unleaded gas for small planes, and more planes are being built to utilize that kind of fuel.
the aircraft manufacturers are building the engines for essentially MoGas, high-octane MoGas, which is unleaded, but the pilots insist they insist on using leaded gasoline.
Milky says it's an old-school way of thinking when it comes to pilots feeling safe in the air. However, during his time petitioning for unleaded gas in automobiles, it was found that unleaded gas was actually better on the engine.
When they used leaded gasoline, they had to put other substances in the gasoline to try to move the lead through the engine.
And that caused problems with tailpipes and exhaust pipes needing to be replaced more rapidly. In addition to protecting vehicles, the lack of lead in the gas also proved to protect children.
When we took it out, there was almost a 90% reduction in blood lead of the children of the United States. And it was phenomenal.
The EPA is currently monitoring airports and general aircraft before finally making a decision. Milky is confident that the EPA will follow the same road in regulating aviation gas as it did with the automobile industry, and in doing so, ending the legacy of lead in the United States. On your side, I'm Randy Russo, WDSU News.
The leaded gasoline is not used in jet fuel, in which major airlines use. There are approximately 167,000 aircrafts in the U.S. that currently use leaded aviation gas for operations.